I reread La Bâtarde, or in English, The Bastard by Violet Leduc. Now, with English translations, the French title is maintained. And this is a book that I believe I first read in February of this year. Read it in a library copy. Wanted to revisit it, and so I purchased a paperback a couple weeks ago. I think it actually arrived just last week, actually. And I loved it the first time I read it. And on the second read through, I enjoyed it even more, if that's possible. So it is, of course, a memoir. But it's not a typical memoir. It's not what you would expect from a memoir, because she's very harsh on herself. She's not sugarcoating things. She's not setting everything up so that you come out of it thinking what a great person she was, how inspiring she was. She covers everything from her failed sham of a marriage to her intimate relationships with women, to just some horrible missteps she makes in relationships, her own laziness in both schoolwork and jobs, although she doesn't call it laziness. I mean, it's revealed there, and I'm sure she understood that she wasn't always trying her hardest. As well as her work earning a livelihood on the black market during the Second World War. I should just briefly note that my copy is translated from the French by Derek Coleman. It's got an introduction by Deborah Levy and a foreword by Simone de Beauvoir. And Simone de Beauvoir is how I discovered this book in the first place. Just going to take a quick look at my notes here. So on the reread, I noticed some things that I didn't notice the first time through. They're mainly things that I had time to think about on this read through a second time that I didn't necessarily think about the first time through. So I was writing in the margins here, taking notes, highlighting, and one of my notes says, "Who has the upper hand here?" On the first read through, I thought Violet Leduc was a vile person. I felt as though she was manipulating people in her life. But on the second read through, it's not quite that apparent. It's hard to tell exactly who is wronging who the most in some of her relationships. In her long-term relationship, which lasts years and years, with a woman named Hermione that she meets while she's at school, you think that Violet Leduc is the one who has treated Hermione terribly, and she's the one who destroyed their relationship. She kind of manipulates Hermione into making love with her in some hotel room in front of a man who is paying to watch them, and Hermione really doesn't want to do it. She, as they're going into the room, she's saying to Violet, "Let's pay for the champagne and we'll go away and we'll forget this ever was going to happen." But she eventually gives in, and they do it, and the man leaves some money and leaves. And that is the end of their relationship, because her mind starts to become more independent. She's doing things and making plans with herself in mind instead of Violet. So it seems like Violet is just like a horrible person, and she's really wronged her partner. But there is a passage where Violet suggests that if Hermione hadn't come into her life, she would have graduated and passed her exams instead of failing them. Well, it doesn't seem right to blame her own laziness on being distracted by Hermione. It does bring to light the way they met. Violet was a student at an all-girls school, and after a short-lived relationship with one of the other girls, she ended up getting involved with Hermione, who was essentially a teacher at her school. So you have Hermione in a position of authority, in a position of power, essentially seducing a student, and when she gets fired, moving in with that same student, engaging in a relationship with her, and essentially taking care of her. Because there was that element that Hermione was the caretaker, the one who is knitting, the one who is making sure that they're saving money so they can go and buy Violet nice clothing and fashionable things. So I thought that was interesting. And one of my other notes had to do with the nature of Violet's love, or at least the way that she described her love for other people. The less someone seems to want her, the more violent and desperate her passion becomes. And she fancies herself in love with a man who's gay. But even though she does express to the reader a desire for physical passion, at other points she rejects that desire for physical passion. She says that's not really what she's after. She's more after an intense friendship. It's almost as though she mistakes love, or at least her version of love, is kind of a powerful obsession in which she wants to be the most important person in that person's life, and she wants to make them the most important person in her life. And it's just kind of a possessive love. It comes across as very, very unhealthy. Because with Hermione, the relationship was never about Hermione. It was always about what felt good for Violet, and she only became obsessed and sick over Hermione rather, when Hermione was getting ready to leave, when she had damaged things beyond repair. There was another young man who she was involved with, and she ended up marrying him. But they married 9 years after her original acquaintance, because earlier she had been with Hermione and she didn't really want anything to do of a sexual nature with this man. She was perfectly happy to have him spend money on her, to enjoy his company, but she wasn't interested in him in a sexual way. But then all of a sudden, around age 30, she decides, you know what, I'm tired of being a virgin, as she calls it. I'd like to marry. And they happen to have been reacquainted at this time, and they marry, but it turns into a sham because he's no longer interested in her. And because he's not interested, it seems that she becomes even more and more interested, and she starts crying and making him think that she's going to kill herself. And then she makes herself ill when he finally does leave. And there's no indication really that she was that in love with him to begin with. It's only when she felt that she didn't possess him that she decided that she was in love. And with her fourth partner in the book, she actually lives with him, but he is a gay man, and so they just have a very, very close friendship. But she expresses desire for him. But I suspect that perhaps it's not a sexual desire, because she doesn't really pursue that. I don't know where I'm going with this now. That was just one of my observations. Point number 3, I realized that something is missing. Something very big is missing. So she starts out as the illegitimate child of of a wealthy house and a maid. And yes, she goes to a semi-good school, but somewhere between that and working as like a copywriter at a publishing house and like a switchboard operator, she ends up making all these societal connections with authors and people of high society, and she gets to know all these people, and it's like they're dying to help her, but you're not sure why. She's not... I'm trying to figure out how to describe this. She's not passionate about her writing. For an autobiography written by a writer, there is a surprising lack of passion for the act of writing. The general attitude is, oh my god, if you insist on helping me, then I guess I'll let you. If you insist on introducing me to this author, well then I guess I'll just let you do it. I'll go along. You can help me. If you insist on getting me this job, then I'll do it. You know, I'd never really thought about writing, but if you insist, then I suppose I'll give it a try, and I'll just have to write just for you. Because you told me I should. And even the act of writing about her childhood, she portrays it as someone else's idea. One of her partners got so tired of her talking to him about her terrible, terrible childhood that he told her, enough is enough. You've got to write this down so I don't have to listen to you talk on for hours every night because you're boring me to death. But there's a lack of passion, a lack of motivation. She comes across as very lazy, as if people were just throwing these ideas and these connections into her lap, which I very much doubt actually happened. Yes, and so that is the end of my notes. Sipping my lemon tea here. I am surprisingly tired, but I wanted to film this. I wanted to talk about La Bâtarde while it was still fresh in my mind before I move on to something new. I think I want to reread the memoirs of Simone de Beauvoir next, because this has gotten me in the mood for those. But yeah, if you're looking for a interesting memoir, something with really fantastic writing, I would recommend checking this out. I think in the introduction, Deborah Levy actually describes the writing as almost poetic. You almost expect it to be written in verse, but it's not, because it's very, very flowery, but it's not flowery in a nauseating way. It's flowery in a good way, in a well-crafted way.